Mic check, 1 2 1 2. Mic check, 1 2 1 2. And just a reminder, please silence your cell phones.
Good morning and welcome to the fall commencement ceremonies of Baylor University School of Law. We're so pleased to have you this morning for this day of celebration and remembrance. To open our ceremony, though, I call upon Ariana Ramirez to deliver our invocation. Ariana.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for allowing us to gather on this special day to honor you as we celebrate our accomplishments. We thank you for the privilege of education that we have been given, where we can serve as counselors and advocates. I thank you for the friendships and relationships we have built as you have guided us through law school. Though the road to get to where we are today has been challenging, we are reminded that you work all things for the good of those who love you. I ask that you remind us of this when we inevitably face difficult trials in the future. I pray that you continue to lead us towards new opportunities where we can be honoring to you and help our community in the ways we were trained to serve. Give us the wisdom to act intentionally and to be faithful stewards of our justice system and the rule of law. As each of us go out on our separate endeavors, I pray that we remember to act with humility and gratitude. Help us become advocates for the individuals who need to be heard. Help us continue to make room for you in all areas of our life. I ask that we are consistently reminded that the work we do from here on out is not centered around ourselves, but around the lives of individuals we can positively impact. During this time of change, nourish our minds and bodies as we accustom ourselves to new routines. Help us set healthy habits and boundaries as we balance life and the hard work we have ahead. Let us always remain steadfast by relying on you, Lord. We pray this in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you, Ariana. Please be seated. And again, welcome to our fall commencement ceremonies of Baylor University School of Law. We're very pleased to have each of you here, the family and friends and loved ones of our graduates, as we mark this day of commencement. Each of our graduates is going on to the next phase of life. We have had the pleasure of having them with us for the last 3 years. They perhaps would not use the word pleasure in describing the past few years themselves, but nonetheless, we have come to this day and we can turn to each of our graduates and we can say, well done. You have accomplished, you have reached a point of distinctive achievement, and you are to congratulate yourself. But, class, you didn't get here on your own. Ever since you were babies, you have been nurtured, you have been cared for, you have been loved by your families, your parents, your grandparents, aunts, uncles, children. You have spouses and partners who have helped you get through these past few years. You deserve to celebrate yourself, but you also must, as you each, I know, recognize, turn to those who have made it possible and who have been with you side by side as you have traveled this journey. So let's now stand, class, turn around and thank those who have made it possible for you. If you take a look at the program, I'm sure you have, you'll see that the graduates have each shared sentiments about their journey as they have passed through the program of Baylor Law. I could not help but notice, as I do each time, that each one of the graduates gives thanks to those, you, who made this possible for them. Our program is known for its rigor. Our program makes no bones about the fact that we make full use of the time and energies and the focus of our graduates as they progress through the program, from being nervous at orientation, from wondering what lies ahead, to coming to this point where they have a pretty good bead, most of them do, on what they're going to do next. And they have found out that they can accomplish perhaps more than what they thought they could when they started at Baylor Law. Many of them, of course, do come from prior experiences that were trying, but we have found over the years that our graduates tell us that law school at Baylor has given them an assurance that they can reach a bar that perhaps they were not certain of reaching previously. We have a program that not only is known for its rigor, but it's also known for sending a strong message to our students and to our now graduates that they are expected to serve. Lawyering is about serving others in points in their lives and their affairs at which oftentimes they are at their lowest point. Their liberty may be at stake, their business may be failing. Also, though, we serve them at the high points in life. They may be starting a business. They may be buying a house. They may be adopting a child. Lawyering gives each of us an opportunity to serve at both the low points when others are in need and the high points when they are celebrating. Service is emphasized to our students at orientation. In class, you will remember this. We talk about service, and I remind you that you have to ask yourself, what am I here for? Now, I tell you, I'm not asking you why you're in this classroom. I'm asking you the larger question of why are you here in this life and how will you be remembered? And I share with the students that absent unusual celebrity or notoriety, in a sense, they won't be remembered to the third and the fourth generation. We know that from Ecclesiastes. But then, I tell them, you will be remembered by the reverberations of your life as you have reached out to others and served them. You will be remembered in that fashion. At the law school, we have a clinics and public service program. It has been in place for about 15 years. Over that period of time, our program has won 14 or 15 awards from the American Bar Association, from the State Bar of Texas, and from the Texas Access to Justice Commission. That is a mark that we are proud of because the clinics and public service programming give to our students one opportunity, one avenue during their time at Baylor Law to feel and to enjoy that wonderful glow that comes with helping someone reach a point that they otherwise would not be able to reach. You are here for a purpose, and remember, I said that purpose can be summarized in a vertical purpose to glorify God and in a horizontal purpose to serve God's kingdom. Baylor lawyers, you're going forth now. You know the lesson. From now on, you will, in fact, be Baylor lawyers, capital B and capital L, because it's not just a descriptor, it is a brand. You have gone through the program that has often been referred to as the place where fun goes to die, and you have survived. I want to make note, Veterans Day is coming up, but I don't make this observation just because it's Veterans Day. I make it at each of our 4 graduations each year and have for many, many years. We just happened this week to be celebrating Veterans Day. So often, we overlook the symbiotic relationship of our armed forces and the legal profession. The legal profession places us in a position to be the stewards of our justice system and the rule of law, so important in these days in our nation. Always has been important. We would not be able, as the legal profession, as lawyers, to practice our craft, our profession, were it not for the security that is provided by our armed forces, not only obviously across the nation, but around the world. And for that reason, I want each of those who are joining us this morning, who are active, reserve, or retired military in any of the branches, to please stand and receive our appreciation. You rock. We live in a day of false heroes. We live in a day of celebrity worship, worshiping those who don't deserve to be worshiped. But nonetheless, we raise them up. You who have served, you are the true heroes. You are the model for our lives. We have today on the stage President Linda Livingstone and several of my colleagues who will assist in the ceremonies. President Livingstone came to the university in 2017. In the 5 to 6 years that she has been with us, she has been an absolute blessing to Baylor University and to every one of our constituencies and every person who loves and is a part of Baylor University. You have extended biographies in each of the programs that you are, of course, holding. And so I'm not going to exhaustively introduce President Livingstone. I'm just going to pick the high points, but the high points go on and on and on. President Livingstone came to Baylor University not as a stranger to the university. She, in fact, was on the faculty as the Associate Dean of the Hankamer School of Business back in the 90s. She was a standout then, and then she began her long journey of consistent additional achievement and accomplishment in her professional career. She was chosen as the Dean of Pepperdine's Grisadio School of Business, and then she moved to the School of Business as Dean at George Washington University. In 2017, we were blessed to have Dr. Livingstone come back to Baylor as president. She has led the university through some extraordinary years. Illuminate the strategic plan to make Baylor a preeminent Christian research university, supported by the Give Light philanthropic campaign, which has raised over $1.1 billion. We have, last December, achieved R1 status. That is the highest classification as a research university given by the Carnegie classification system. And look around the campus as you go to the Law Center this morning. Capital expansion, just a couple examples, will be the Hurd Welcome Center. You'll pass it on your right as you pass under the I-35 underpass. If you look a little bit north on I-35, just about 200 yards, you will see the Foster Basketball Pavilion going up. And there's so much more. President Livingstone advances the academic enterprise, the research enterprise, and also, hey, how about athletics? Sikkim Bears, 2 o'clock this afternoon, Oklahoma. You'll be home in time to see it. We have had remarkable success in each of the venues of endeavor that a university invests itself in. President Livingstone has become the chair of the NCAA Board of Governors. She is the vice chair and the chair-elect of the Big 12 Conference Board. She is the vice chair and the chair-elect of the American Council on Education. She has been a dynamo for Baylor University. She has been an ardent supporter of Baylor law. She is admitted to the Hall of Fame of the Oklahoma State University, where she played basketball, and she met her husband, Brad, at OSU. He was also a basketball player there. And their daughter, Shelby, has the genes. Shelby was a standout volleyball student athlete at Baylor University and is a recent graduate of the George W. Truett Seminary. Dr. Livingstone, President Livingstone, thank you for joining us this morning. Thank you. You are a blessing to our university and to each of us. Thank you profoundly. I want to now note a few high points that are in the program, but I want to note them about my colleagues who are joining us on the stage this morning. Professor Bridget Fusilier will be assisting in the hooding of the graduates. Professor Fusilier came to us from a practice in Jefferson County, Texas, the Mahaffey-Weber firm. She was involved in a panoply of community activities while there, and she has continued that here in Waco at Baylor among our students. She is the founder, creator, and force behind our annual Adoption Day, which will occur later this month. I can't explain it except to say that the Law Center, the first level of the Law Center, turns into a magical place that ascribes to some theme as each year 25 to 35 families are farmed. Kids who have come out of services receive their forever family. Professor Fusilier has been awarded the recognition as an outstanding faculty member at the university. She is deeply involved in our clinics program, and in particular the Veterans Clinic. She has been honored by the State Bar of Texas for her work in establishing the Veterans Clinic and in serving veterans and first responders. Professor Liz Fraley. Professor Fraley came to us from a very successful practice in Dallas. Professor Fraley is part of our practice court team. Hey, have you ever heard of practice court, family and friends? Yeah. It's that third year, 6-month immersive experience that we have to make sure not just that our graduates can go into the courtroom. It's not just about evidence. It's not just about the rules of procedure. It's not just about specific courtroom skills. It's about the art and the science of being an advocate. And we are all advocates in any venue in which we find ourselves. We're advocates in our families, in our community, in our workplace. Professor Fraley has been honored time and time again as one of the best lawyers in the Dallas Magazine. She has received the highest accolades in the Martindale-Hubbell in terms of the rating of lawyers. She is one of the best of the best. She is an absolute dynamo in the courtroom. Professor Fraley has been the recipient of so many honors, and she has, of course, also been a speaker and an author. Her engagements in speaking to the bar and to the communities in terms of what trial practice, what our jury system, what our court system is all about is just endless. Thank you so much for taking our students in the third year, Professor, and taking them through their paces and making sure that they realize they haven't completed Baylor Law School until they have run the gauntlet. Also this morning on stage is Associate Dean Patricia Wilson. Patricia Wilson, Dean Wilson, became our Associate Dean last year. I have enjoyed thoroughly working with her. She is a senior faculty member. She has been on the faculty since 1993. Highly respected, teaches in the property, employment, discrimination, and labor areas. Professor Dean Wilson is a person with a true servant's heart. I'm going to go by some of the professional accolades. I'm going to tell you something about Dean Wilson. She and her husband, Mike, they have had 24 foster children in their home over the years. The last two that they had, they adopted. They have 4 children, and the last 2 are adopted. Sometimes you look at what someone actually does, and you can tell that that person is the true and genuine servant. Dean Wilson has just completed her year as the moderator, the national moderator of the, moderator of the Cooperative Baptist Fellowship. She is someone who is so admired within the profession, within the faith world, and we have the blessing of having her as our Associate Dean, and that's so important because as the students go through, and our former Associate Dean, Professor Leah Teague, knows that students need a lot of help as they go through in terms of guidance, direction, and care, and she just does a wonderful, superb job. She has terrific people skills. I am likewise so blessed to work with you, Pat. Thank you. And also joining us this morning is our Senior Assistant Dean, Angela Cruz-Turner. Dean Cruz-Turner has responsibilities at the law school that go over a number of different operational areas. She comes from the practice. She's been with us for a long time, though. She understands Baylor Law School inside and out. Once again, I want to go just to a couple highlights. She was named a couple years ago as the Outstanding Young Lawyer of McLennan County Bar Association. And then we normally kind of stay away from honoring our own, but there's a recognition that we give each year to the Outstanding Young Baylor Lawyer. And in 2020, we designated and awarded that honor to Angela because she's just into everything and she makes things happen at the law school. I will introduce a bit later in our ceremony Professor Consular, who is the speaker for this morning's ceremony. But at this point, I want to call upon the highest ranking student in the graduating class. I'm looking at the name here. I know her well, but I don't want to mess this up. Holly Annette Shockey Ramirez. The Ramirez is real important because Holly just recently got married and added that on. And did I do that right? All right. Holly, please.
Good morning, and thank you all for joining us to celebrate today. When I found out I would have the honor of giving this speech, well, first I happy cried and called my entire family. But then I started thinking about the topic I should speak about, and fear is what kept coming to mind. You see, I thought about going to law school for a really long time, but fear kept me from trying. I was afraid that I wouldn't get in. I was afraid that I was too old. I was afraid that it would be hard, and about a dozen other things to be afraid of. But finally, I just tried. And now today, looking back, I can say it was not easy. Hard was accurate. But what I can also say is that it's amazing to see the affirmation that comes when you follow a path that you're feeling pulled to do. My fellow graduates and I have all been called to law school. And in our futures, we will have many more opportunities that pull us to make a difference. With that in mind, I would like you all to imagine a mountain. Imagine a mountain that has greenery at the bottom and snow at the top. It's beautiful in the distance, but as you get closer, the sheer size of this mountain is intimidating. And thinking about that path you have to take to get to the top, you can see rocks that would easily slide. There are sharp edges, there are drop-offs, and there's even some ice at the top. All of a sudden, this mountain that was beautiful and maybe a little exciting from a distance is a little bit terrifying up close. This mountain represents every big, audacious goal we will ever have. This mountain also represents law school. Today we are at the top and we can enjoy the view. But if we think back, it was no easy path to get here. We had to overcome the fear of not getting in. We had to move away from family and friends, survive stressful cold calls where we really did not think we knew the answer. We had to give our first closing argument in front of classmates. There were late nights and early mornings. We read 9,339 pages of case law in practice court alone. And let's not forget the zombies that we were at 8 a.m. when we couldn't have coffee in class. Luckily, throughout the process, we did keep our eyes open for bright spots, like Professor Fusilier teaching property with her Barbie dream house and literal bundle of sticks. Or that day that Professor Counselor brought his record player to class and talked about aliens. Let's not forget Professor Fraley's fashion sense. I'm pretty sure her outfit made it into most of our class's daily notes. There was Professor Bates, who drew himself as the reasonable man, hair and all. There were countless good lucks before trials and good jobs after cold calls. There was even one cold call at the end of a particularly exhausting week where a classmate carried us and earned a round of applause as soon as the professor left the room. And let's not forget that we did not get to the top of this mountain alone. One of the smartest things we did was surround ourselves with people who had our backs at all times. Most of them are in the room today. There are the moms who talk to us on the phone every morning. There are the siblings who did brag posts about us on social media. There are nieces and nephews who FaceTimed us and remind us that life can still be lighthearted. There are professors and mentors who helped us figure out our path up the mountain as we went, and some of them even helped us get jobs for after law school. There are practice court partners who did some of their best work with you at 4 a.m., and friends who showed up with food when we didn't ask for it, and sometimes it was lasagna during finals week. In the future, we will have opportunities where we are called to climb other mountains. And like the mountain we visualized earlier, it will probably start off exciting and then become somewhat terrifying. The opportunity may be out of our comfort zones, and it may take overcoming a lot of negativity. But my hope is that whenever we are called to climb another mountain, we remember we have already conquered a huge one. We have the determination. We know to keep our eyes open for the bright spots along our challenging path. And we know to surround ourselves with people who will have our backs, just like this whole room of people here today. When that moment comes, let's look back at law school, think about the view from the top today, and remember that our doubts are traitors, and they make us lose the good we oft might win by fearing to attempt.
Thank you, Holly. I just realized I've been so focused on getting the Ramirez correctly. Ariana, did I call you Ariana Ramirez? Will you still be my friend? Ariana Perez. Our speaker this morning is my colleague, Professor Jeremy Consular. Professor Consular, my heavens, he has been chosen by our graduating classes so often to be the commencement speaker. He is a colleague at the law school that commands the respect of the students in class, commands it in a remarkable fashion. As I mentioned earlier with Professor Fusilier, the university has designations of outstanding faculty, tenured, untenured, in teaching and research and service. Professor Consular joined us in 2003. He's a double bear, and he had clerked for the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, Renato Garza, Judge Garza, and he came to us. And in 2007, he had made his mark, and he received the university recognition as outstanding faculty in the non-tenured for teaching. And then this year, he received the outstanding award recognition for tenure teaching. And that says something about the powerful presence that he has in the classroom. Professor Consular has in a sense, a unique perspective on our students. He teaches civil procedure, which is a first quarter course. And so he sees them at the very outset when they're nervous and kind of bumbling around and not knowing what this is all about. And then in practice court, he is part of our practice court team. We have, of course, Professor Wren, Professor Fraley, who I've already noted, and Professor Consular, along with Robert Little, Professor Little, who put our students through the paces. But he gets to see our students then at the other end of the tunnel. And you must know, students, he shares it, that he is always so proud of you. And when he says he's proud of you, he can say it with the knowledge of what you were and what you have become. He is a gifted teacher. Professor Consular has published 4 books, many articles. He's a wonderful scholar. I so admire him because he's always learning. Some years ago, he came from the trial section of the firm Andrews Kurth at the time, and he had been involved in civil practice. And he decided if he was going to be at Baylor Law School teaching civil procedure, practice court, that he needed to get some criminal experience. So he took 6 months off to become an assistant district attorney at the local McLennan County DA's office. And that's the mark of someone who wants to do it right, taking time away from normal activities to immerse oneself in a different but yet similar area of endeavor. Professor Consular this year was named as the Abner V. McCall Chair of Evidence, the endowed chair position in recognition of his work with our students, his scholarship, and his service. Professor Consular, the students, they adore you. And the fact that this is about your umpteenth time over the years in addressing the students at their commencement is certainly potent evidence of how they regard you. Professor Consular.
They adore me by giving me the chance to give a speech in front of my bosses and my boss's boss's boss. What could go wrong? Well, welcome to this celebration of a great accomplishment. Family members, I know what you're all thinking, because it's the same thing I always think when I attend a graduation and the speaker takes to the podium. How long is this guy going to talk? I want you to know that short graduation speeches are my specialty. They're a habit I developed of necessity. A number of years ago, when another graduating class selected me to be their speaker, I went to my now retired colleague, Professor Mike Rogers, for advice about giving a graduation speech. He said the key to a good graduation speech is to recognize that nobody is in the audience to hear you talk. They're in the audience to see their loved ones walk across the stage. So keep it short, he said. And to make sure I kept it short, he said that I would lose 1 tenure vote for every minute my speech went over 15 minutes. He concluded his advice by saying, just remember, nobody cares what you have to say, and if it takes you too long to say it, we'll fire you. But being a part of your commencement is a special privilege, and I enjoy it because over the years it has confused my children. My wife Jennifer and I have 3 of them, a son Jack and 2 daughters, Brett and Kate. Historically, my children have been thoroughly unimpressed with what I do for a living. Not one of them is planning to become a lawyer. When my son was about 4, someone asked him what I do, and he said he types on the computer and sometimes he talks to people. As the years passed, Jack acquired a better understanding of my job, but it didn't raise my status in his eyes. As Brad mentioned, for a short time, I worked as a prosecutor here in McLennan County, and we often drive past the courthouse where I worked. It's a beautiful building, and my kids like the idea that I worked there. Well, while passing by that courthouse when my son was about 9 years old, he said, "You know, Daddy, I think I might want to be a lawyer like you one day." Finally, I thought, a little respect. But he continued, "I just don't understand why you would work at Baylor instead of the courthouse. When I grow up, I'm not going to be a lawyer who works at Baylor like you. I'm going to be a courthouse lawyer." He paused, and in the ensuing silence, I could almost hear the wheels turning inside his head. After about a minute, he said, "Well, I'll be a courthouse lawyer as long as they make as much money as the lawyers who work at Baylor." Now, my experiences with Jack led me to believe that I needed to take a different approach to impressing my younger daughters, Brett and Kate. Another graduation, when the girls were little, provided me with the opportunity I needed when I was decked out in my regalia, a long flowing robe and a hood. Brett was about 4, and she asked me, "Why are you wearing that robe, Daddy?" I knelt down, I looked into her eyes, and in a hushed, secretive tone, I said, "Because Daddy's a Jedi." I'm still not certain what career path my children will take, lawyer, Jedi, or something else entirely. But graduates, I can tell you that if one day one of my children sits where you sit now, I will be proud, because I know how much work it takes to be able to sit where you sit now and the good character it requires to do what you all have done. So family members, congratulations and rejoice, because your beloved graduates are outstanding young men and women, and they will continue to make you very proud. Graduates, now we've come to the part where I'm supposed to share some wisdom. This is a problem. First of all, let's assume I've got some wisdom to share. Don't you think I should have shared it with you by now? I mean, we've been here together for 3 years and I get paid to teach you. So I'm not going to try to give you any wisdom. Instead, I have a request. It might strike you as an odd request, but what I want from you and the rest of your generation is something I think we are sorely lacking in our society right now, and it's this: civility. Here's why I'm making the request. This is not just a graduation. It is a commencement. Not just the end of your time in law school, but it's the beginning of something, and it's the beginning of something very important. This commencement is part of the process whereby we gradually hand over responsibility for leading our communities, our state, and our nation to a new generation. And as lawyers, you'll play an outsized role in bearing that responsibility. Indeed, the track record of Baylor Law's alumni makes it safe to assume that some of you may serve as elected officials and in other high offices in our state or other states and federal government. Now, when I say civility, I don't mean formal pleasantries. Of course, I don't mean be nice. That's not what I mean. I mean it in the sense of being a good citizen, especially in the way we conduct our public and political discourse. What you see from us graduates, the older generations, the name-calling, the demonizing people with whom we disagree, and even violence and threats of violence, is not an example you should follow. We are leaving your generation, as you well know, with some big problems, and you can't solve them unless you can improve upon the older generation's recent track record on the civility front. Here's one example of a problem you face. You're going to have to address our national debt. I sound like a codger, even to myself, as I say that, but this problem, I think, is reaching a critical mass. We have come to a point where the national debt exceeds the size of our economy and continues to grow. And I don't think you'll be able to kick the can down the road like we've done so far. Your generation will have to solve the problem by making the tough choices we could not. Here's another example. Scientists tell us that human activity has caused irreparable damage to the planet. Now, I'll rush to say I'm a hypocrite for even mentioning climate change. In private practice, I handled environmental litigation, and let's just say I didn't represent the Sierra Club. I was never on the same side of the case as the baby seals or the trees. Also, I grew up in Humble, Texas, and I don't know if you know anything about Humble, Texas, but pulling fossil fuels out of the ground is kind of what we do. So to meet this challenge, you'll have to persuade people like me to make the sacrifices necessary to solve the problem. And you'll have to overcome more than just the financial disincentives associated with it. You'll have to convince people that carbon emissions are heating the earth, melting polar ice, raising sea levels, and that drought, famine, cataclysmic weather, and animal extinction are going to make it far harder to live on this planet. As the great Westerosi philosopher Tyrion Lannister once said, people's minds aren't made for problems that large. And that's just a couple of the things you're up against. And these two problems might not be the ones you're most concerned about, but I use them here because they are of a piece, in the sense that they are getting worse, which means they are increasingly more difficult to solve. They are also similar in that so far we have been unable to reach consensus about how to solve them, or even whether or not they are actually problems. To be sure, reasonable substantive disagreements exist about best solutions, but why haven't we been able to reconcile those differences and find some common ground? I think an erosion of civility and the quality of our discourse largely is to blame. I think you have to fix this problem before you can fix any of the others. To bring a new civility to our nation, I think you'll have to end, or at least moderate, the all too common practice of demonizing people you disagree with. This should come fairly easy, graduates. I don't believe during law school any of you ever asked a judge to grant your motion because your opponent was a bad person, even if you thought that they were. But it's an entirely different story in our public discourse. I'm a news junkie. I watch and read all sorts of it, from the most liberal to the most conservative. I see this practice most on primetime cable news, radio shows, and the internet. The message is this: this person is bad because they disagree with us. Or don't believe this person because they're bad. Such ad hominem attacks seem like intellectual comfort food until you actually meet one of the demons. The demon who desperately wants that border wall you loathe, she's a widow who spends her days praying over every name on the church prayer list and making meals for shut-ins. The demon who wants an expensive government-funded health care program is just struggling to pay the medical expenses of a beloved aging parent. Look, people's personal struggles don't make them right on the issues, but they can help us understand that they aren't demons. And you can sit down and talk about problems with widows and caregivers. It's hard to do that with demons. If you're going to solve these problems, you'll have to speak to people with whom you disagree. And as lawyers, I think you need to lead others by example in the proper way to make compelling arguments without levying personal attacks against your opponents. You can improve civility by being willing to compromise on solutions to problems. Imagine that you're sitting down with a group of people to discuss an issue. Maybe it's a church or a school committee or a meeting at work. And someone in the meeting says, "I'm not even going to discuss the issue. Give me 100% of what I want, or I'm going home." That's not leadership. That's not virtuous. It's childish. We don't tolerate that kind of behavior in our work lives or in our charitable work, and consequently, it rarely happens in those contexts. We expect a give and a take. Now, in contrast, we not only tolerate it in our public discourse, too often we root for it and we celebrate it. Now, graduates, it's okay to drive a hard bargain. We want you to drive a hard bargain. Just don't forget about the bargain part. I'm not asking you to abandon deeply held convictions just to reach a compromise. But an unwillingness to seek common ground shouldn't be one of those deeply held convictions. Only spoiled children get 100% of what they want 100% of the time. As you begin lives of service and leadership, I hope you'll remember that your idea of perfect is often the enemy of what is good. Tell the truth, even when it's hard, and demand the same from other leaders, especially from the ones you like. I know you learned this in law school. We taught you to never surrender your credibility, not even when a lie might give you an advantage. I wish all of our elected leaders and officials would adhere to that principle, but even they deserve some grace and forgiveness. After all, who amongst us has never told a lie at some point? I confess, however, that I tend to reserve that grace and forgiveness for the liars I generally agree with rather than the ones I don't. I'll watch a politician dodge, conceal, or distort an inconvenient fact or just falsely claim it isn't a fact, and I'll let it slide because I like what the politician is trying to accomplish. I'll see a different politician whose point of view I don't agree with use precisely the same tactics, and it will outrage me. I think you got to do better than me. I think it's important for your generation to demand consistently the unvarnished truth from all your leaders, even if they're on your side. We are bombarded from all directions with spin and outright lies to such an extent that it has become difficult to discern what the facts are. If law school has taught you nothing else, I hope it has taught you that you can't fix a problem until you accurately identify it. To restore a meaningful civility, you'll have to be willing to make hard choices. The problems I mentioned earlier, the national debt and climate change, I use them as examples not because they're the only problems, but because they are problems we haven't fully confronted. I think the simplest explanation for why we haven't is because our generation decided to make your generation's choices tougher so that ours could be easier. I don't think you'll have that luxury of laying off problems like these onto future generations. You're going to have to make the choices we have avoided. My dad once told me that I needed to learn the difference between a difficult decision and a decision I wish I didn't have to make. A difficult decision is when you reach a fork in the road and you're not sure which path to take. But sometimes you are certain about which path you have to take. You just don't want to walk it. Our inaction on problems such as these has foreclosed some of the paths that might otherwise have been open to you had we acted sooner. So what is left to you are not so much difficult decisions as they are questions about whether your generation will have the courage to walk the paths that remain. Despite the tremendous challenges you face, I am optimistic about your generation's ability to overcome these challenges. I believe you do have the courage to walk the hard paths. But not everyone shares my optimism about your generation. And that's putting it mildly. A Forbes article summed it up this way: criticizing your generation has become a national pastime. According to one description of you, you are narcissistic, entitled, and lazy. Really? You're the only ones who are lazy? I'm not growing a beard, I'm just too lazy to shave. My internet browser history includes the question, what are the best ninja movies on Netflix? So I think that criticism is unfair and painting you with too broad a brush. Here's what I see. Your generation has already led on issues that have befuddled older generations, like climate change and gun violence. You don't seem as divided by things like race and religion. And here's one that frankly makes the criticism of you upsetting, even to me, and I hope to you as well. Your generation has fought bravely in wars you didn't start that began at a time you can hardly remember. And who are we to criticize you anyway, when our incivility is largely to blame for leaving you with these profound problems? The sword lies in the stone, but we don't draw it. Rather than uniting to solve our biggest challenges, we tend to bicker and call each other names while the fires rage and the oceans rise. So frankly, I hope these criticisms of you puts a chip on your shoulder and you go out and you lead like a generation with a chip on its shoulder. For my part, I think your generation has what it takes to improve civility in this country and to solve the big problems. And I know for a fact that the 8 of you have what it takes. I know what it took for you to reach this point. To paraphrase Winston Churchill, you haven't journeyed all the way to the milestone we celebrate today because you're made of sugar candy. We don't give diplomas to snowflakes. So I want you to grab the sword by the hilt, pull it from the stone, and show us how it's done. Become the leaders we all need you to be. Thank you, graduates. Thank you for the honor of teaching you these last few years. Stay in touch, and may God bless you.
Thank you, Jeremy. A potent challenge, but one that will be met. Your wisdom, your words are appreciated. Thank you, Professor Consular. Now I call upon President Livingstone for remarks, and following the President's remarks, we will proceed to the conferral of the degree. President Livingstone.
Thank you, Dean Tobin, and what a privilege it is to be with all of you today and to be here to honor our graduates this morning. Congratulations on this momentous and very exciting day in your life. You have all survived the gauntlet of Baylor's practice courts, final exams, externships, and all of the other degree requirements that it took to get to this point today. And you should be very, very proud of yourselves, as I know all of your family and friends that are with us today are. Baylor is a very unique place in the world of law education. You are graduating from a university that takes both the life of the mind and the life of faith very, very seriously. It's a distinctive educational approach that has equipped you with the outstanding training required for worldwide leadership and service. So as graduates of Baylor Law, you have been prepared to make a difference in the world. Today, graduates, as you prepare to become a part of that great legacy that is Baylor Law, capital B and capital L, as Dean Tobin said, you become part of the Baylor alumni family legacy, and more specifically, the Baylor Law family legacy. The Baylor Law alumni family is filled with difference makers all over the world who have a profound impact across Texas, the United States, and elsewhere. You are now part of a legacy of excellence. You are graduating from one of the most prestigious and most rigorous law schools in this country. Princeton Review has called it the Marine Boot Camp of law schools, as Dean Tobin said, where fun goes to die. I read recently in July 2022, the students that took the bar exam then, we had a 96% pass rate, #1 in Texas. I think that is, we've been #1 in Texas about half of the time in the last 20 years. So obviously one of the top law schools here, if not the top law school. So it's no surprise that Baylor Law graduates have the stellar reputation for excellence that they do. You are also now a part of a legacy of service. I've met so many law alumni who are serving in the state and national legislature, in government service in Austin or in Washington, D.C., and all around the country and the world, in significant roles as senators, representatives, governors, attorney generals, and in so many other roles of public service. The list goes on and on and on. You are also now a part of the legacy of integrity and values and character. As I interact with your fellow Baylor lawyers, it is clear to me that Baylor lawyers take very seriously their commitment to legal ethics and proper professional behavior, seeking always to uphold the standards of the profession, but also seeking to do the right thing for the right reasons. You're graduating from a law school that values not only critical thinking and professional competencies and excellence, but also character and integrity so that you can succeed both in and out of the courtroom. I encourage you to begin now, even in this very, very early stage of your legal career, to consider what you want your personal legacy to be and how you want to contribute to the Baylor Law alumni family legacy that has, for many, many years before you, enhanced the visibility and reputation of our law school and served society in very significant and important ways. Pro Ecclesia, Pro Texana, Pro Futura. For the church, for Texas and the world, for the future. May your legacy be one of excellence, one of service, one of integrity for the church, for Texas and the world, and for the future. So thank you all for your commitment to being a part of this law school, and congratulations on your accomplishment and your graduation today. Thank you.
Thank you, President Livingstone. Thank you for your support of all that we do at Baylor Law. The time has arrived for the conferral of the degrees. Will the degree candidates please stand? President Livingstone, each of the degree candidates standing before you have completed the requirements for the degree of Juris Doctor as specified by the faculty of the School of Law acting under your authority, and under the authority of the Baylor University Board of Regents. Accordingly, it is my pleasure to present the class to you for the conferral of the degree of Juris Doctor.
Thank you, Dean Tobin. Based on the recommendation of the faculty of the Baylor School of Law and on the recommendation of Dean Tobin, and based on the power vested in me by the Board of Regents of Baylor University, it is my distinct pleasure and honor to confer upon you today the degree of Juris Doctor. Congratulations. We're very proud of you.
We will now go forward to the award of the diplomas and the hooding of each of our graduates. At Baylor Law School, at our commencement ceremonies, we have a long tradition. It is one that we treasure and we hope that you will embrace. As the name of your graduate is called, we invite you to make as much noise as you possibly can. If you feel reticent about doing that in these beautiful sanctuary surroundings, just keep this in mind. We measure the depth of love that you have for your graduate by the decibels that you can produce.
Patrick James Aguilar, cum laude. Laura Elizabeth Marie Cook. Sarah Elizabeth Curitan. Michael Clark Morin. William Peter James Monk. Ariana Matavel Perez. Holly Annette Shockey Ramirez, cum laude, highest ranking student in the graduating class. Riley Wade Waters.
Riley's family. That was good. Let's celebrate all of our graduates. Please be seated. You've done it. We're so proud of you. You're moving on to be Baylor lawyers, capital B, capital L. And we are proud of you, so proud right now, but across the years, as Professor Consular noted and as President Livingstone noted, Baylor lawyers have a long tradition of being very impactful both in the public and in the private spheres. And we know that you're going to follow in that tradition, and we will become, if it's possible, all the more proud of you for the lawyers you are and for the people you are. Remember to be led by faith. Remember about the vertical and the horizontal dimensions of life. That is what takes us through, and that is what upholds us in all that we do by God's grace. The 18th century cleric John Wesley, theologian, said that do all the good you can in all the places you can, to all the people you can, in all the ways that you can, for all the times that you can, for as long as you can. And I want you to hold those words of Wesley close to your heart. This morning, President Livingstone, thank you so much for joining us. It's been our delight and honor to have you at our ceremonies. I thank each of you, family and friends, for being with us. We will be having a reception at the Law Center in honor of our graduates. It is given by the Baylor Law Alumni Association. We will have most of the doors of the classrooms and the other spaces at the Law Center open so that you, family and friends, can be led by your graduates on a tour of where they have shed blood and so forth. It will be a time of celebration. Today's ceremonies are made possible by the work of a lot of folks who attend to every detail. I want to thank especially Susie Daniel, Jerry Cunningham, Meredith Meyer, and Nick Texera. They are my colleagues in the Dean Suite at the Law Center, along with Dean Wilson and Dean Cruz-Turner. I also want to thank our student workers, our wonderful undergraduate student workers, Kendall Smith, Summer Lanau, Reagan Hovey, and also Stephen Bullock, who is in charge of the IT matters that attend to our ceremony, and Rory Nada, the facilities manager for First Baptist Church Waco. We have for many years had the beautiful, gorgeous sanctuary provided to us by the church for our commencement ceremonies, and we're so grateful for that. It adds so much to the tone of our ceremony to be in a space in which we worship God, in which we worship our Creator, our Savior. We will now adjourn. However, our adjournment is going to be brief. We will have a recessional. The class will go out along with the stage party, but please remain seated. We will re-enter over at the side door here, and then we'll come to the stage. The photographer, our photographer, will be taking a class photo, and of course, you are also able to take photos at that point. This is a wonderful day. This is a blessed day. This is a day that has been brought to us through God's grace. Thank you for being a part. Remember this always as you go forward, class, into life and further into the profession. We are adjourned.